Welcome, Red Wings fans, to the Belfort Training Center here at Little Caesars Arena for a special edition of The Word on Woodward. I'm Daniela Bruce alongside Art Regner and Ken Cal this fine afternoon. We've had a long day of talking some Red Wings hockey, and it's not done yet, guys. Steve Yzerman was very busy on the free agent market yesterday, and he's about to address the media in just a few minutes about some of those moves that he made. Let's get to talking about those. I want to hear your thoughts on free agency as a whole and what your favorite move was. Art, why don't you go first?
Well, I think there were a lot of favorite moves. I mean, moves that I really did like. I think David Perron is an excellent move, really. I mean, he's a winner. He scores big goals. He's a big man. 34 years old, one of the older guys on the team, if not the eldest guy on the team. And I think that he's going to bring a lot as far as credibility in the room. I mean, when he says something, it's going to matter something. But I really think out of all the moves, and he made a lot of them, he being, of course, Steve, I like the Ville Husso move. I really do. I think that, they really shores up the goaltending, and goaltending is really important. Nothing against Ned, but I think it's good to have that competition. And, of course, I got to say, my Michigan guy, Andrew Kopp, I mean, I've been hearing about him since he was the quarterback at Skyline High School out there in Ann Arbor. So, he did a lot of great things.
And just a reminder, the Ville Husso move was actually a trade during the draft. They traded a third-round pick to acquire Ville Husso from St. Louis.
Now I look at that third-round pick that they gave up. I think, well, that's Willie Husso.
Yeah.
That's how I look.
Well, yeah, I'm just reminding fans.
No, you're right, though.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. But I'm just saying that I think that was a really good move.
All right, Ken, what did you think of yesterday's moves?
Well, I think Steve Yzerman, based on what the Ottawa Senators did with DeBrincat and everything else, like, he had to make some moves and he had to spend some money and he had to bring some free agents in. I guess I was more surprised with the ease of how all these players within a two and a half hour span ended up in Detroit. And, I don't know what Steve Yzerman said to the agents or to the players themselves, but it just seemed like one move after another. Next thing you know, 5 guys are signed.
Well, a lot of them addressed the media between yesterday and today, and it sounds like a Steve Yzerman phone call is sometimes enough. Just knowing who he is, not only as an NHL player, but what he's done as an NHL general manager speaks volumes to some of these guys.
Well, think about this, Art and Daniela. I mean, if you're on the market, you're looking for the best possible contract, right? And sometimes it takes hours and maybe even days to find a suitor that you're going to go or what team you're going to go to. But it just seemed like it was one after the other.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, 5 guys are Detroit Red Wings now.
Well, Art, let me ask you this. They seem to think, they being the free agents after they addressed the Detroit media, that this is kind of the next step in the rebuild. Do you think Steve Yzerman made that statement yesterday?
Well, yeah, certainly. And, I'm going off the top of my head. I mean, when Steve Yzerman calls, I mean, I still think he's the 7th all-time leading scorer in NHL history. I mean, this is a guy who obviously knew how to play the game and made the most out of his talent, but his will and desire to win. So I'm sure that has gotten around, and, there's an awful lot of respect, and he's definitely earned it for Steve Yzerman. So when he calls you, it really does mean something to those fellas. And, I look at it, I think very much so that the infancy stage of the rebuild, the foundation is there. I think now, and whether Steve, and I hope he answers this, is a message was sent not so much to the fan base, and he does send messages to the fan base, but I think to the current Red Wings in the room, it's like, we're serious now, boys. It's time to start upping our game a little bit, meaning it's start to ascend up the standings. And, Ken made a great point too. I mean, everybody in their division got better. I mean, the teams that you would think that they're competing with for the final playoff spot, I mean, Tampa's not going anywhere. Florida's not going anywhere. Toronto's not going to go anywhere, even though their goaltending situation I still can't figure out. But with all that said, Boston seems to be the team that might be teetering here a little bit, and that opens up the gate a little bit for the Red Wings and Ottawa, and certainly I think Ottawa did a really good job yesterday too. So there's going to be a lot of competition, and don't forget the Sabres. Eventually, they're going to get their acts together.
Yeah, and you got to look outside of the division too. Steve Yzerman wants to compete, even if maybe it's not playoff contention next season. Although I'm pretty confident with some of the guys that they added that they could be contending for a playoff spot. The Eastern Conference is really strong, Ken.
Well, just look at Johnny Gaudreau. He goes to another Eastern Conference team, the Columbus Blue Jackets, and that kind of makes them stronger. So it's not just the division that the Red Wings are to get into the top tier. If they're looking for a wild card spot, you have to look at the Metropolitan Division 2 and think of how many great teams there are. The East, to me, is definitely stronger than the West, at least from a point standpoint. We saw that last year. That was the case. I don't see that going away. But I think Steve Yzerman addressed some significant needs on this team. He got a second-line center, Iceman and Kopp. He bolstered the defense with some stay-at-home, big, solid defenders like Mata and Ben Sherratt. And also, you look at a power play that needed to really pick itself up, and you got a guy like David Perron who scores a majority of his goals with a man advantage. That's going to help out as well.
Let's focus on Ben Sherratt a little bit. If there was a move to critique or criticize, fans seem to be criticizing the Ben Sherratt one, and I want to talk about that a little bit because I personally like the move. I don't think the Red Wings have a defenseman that is the type of defenseman that he is, which, like you said, Ken, is a stay-at-home, rough-and-tumble defensive defenseman. I think he's going to be a great addition to work alongside a young Mo Sider or Philip Aronik.
Well, you need guys to shut teams down and defensemen to shut players down as well. And he's that kind of guy, not flash and dash or anything like that. He's a big body guy that can play physical. And when you get him, and if he's teamed up with Mo Sider, I said this before, you get two big guys, it's hard to get to the front of the net. So that really helps. And I thought in a lot of games, maybe not last year, but the year before, the Red Wings were in a lot of one-goal hockey games, and they just couldn't finish because they didn't have those types of defensemen that they do right now.
Well, you know, the thing that's working against Sherratt is if you looked at a lot of the scouting services looking at potential free agents, you know, overrated, overpaid. You know, that was all that, you know, and obviously fans are reading that stuff and they're sitting there thinking, well, wow, you know, is this, you know, one time where Steve was swinging for the fences and, you know, maybe it was just a fly ball to center field. But, look, Sherratt, you know, probably knows that. He looks at it that way. I like him as a player. You know, at Montreal, I thought he was a good player. He does have an abrasive side. I thought he was a little not defensive yesterday, but you could tell there's a little bit of an edge to him. And, you know, I think it's a good move. The one thing that I like about everything that Steve did is that there is competition on this team now. There is. And there is competition on the blue line, especially on the left side when you look at it that way, because I don't know how you two feel about it. And I know I keep saying it over and over, but I think that Evanson makes the team.
All right. We know that you think that. Let's see what Steve Yzerman has to say about all of the moves that he made in yesterday's free agency frenzy.
Joining us today, we're going to continue this afternoon with Red Wings Executive Vice President and General Manager Steve Yzerman. Please let us know in the chat if you'd like to ask a question. And we'll get started with Lillian St. James.
Hi, Steve. So busy first day of free agency for you. What do you feel you've accomplished?
Well, you know, we with several expiring contracts, we had roster spots open, available, needs to be addressed, and we felt, you know, we addressed, you know, positionally some needs. We needed simply to add players to obviously fill out a roster, but address some needs. An important need at center, and Andrew Kopp, right hand shot forward, and David Perron, and kind of a pleasant surprise in what we consider, you know, a scoring winger in Dominic Kubalik, adding some defensemen that we think will help us our special teams, in particular our penalty killing, and then defensively 5-on-5 as well. So these are all areas we talked about in the spring, that areas we needed to improve upon. And like I said, with some of our contracts expiring and holes in our roster, we're in a position to bring in some new faces and players we think address some of these needs.
You had spoken at the end of the season about how the team needed to be better defensively. How important was it to give Derek the pieces to try to make that happen?
Well, like ultimately, you need good players to win games, and you need good players to be good offensively and defensively. It all comes down to that, and it's up to the coaching staff to try to maximize the talent they have and find a way to get be most efficient in all areas with the players that we have. So, you know, for our coaching staff, in order to try and improve in these areas, we need better play from our team, and whether that's our returning players maturing, getting 1 year more experience, and then bringing in some new faces that maybe are more adept in those roles.
And lastly, just with the development camp, having been here this week, you know, you talked you've talked about how you weren't sure going into last season, whereas Lucas Raymond had maybe a little more confidence in Brett Steiber. How would you rate Simon Edvinson's preparedness and, you know, the benefit of him having going to World Juniors right before coming to camp?
Yeah, well, that tournament, all these experiences, I think, are fantastic for players to go into these World Junior tournaments. They're great experiences individually for them, but also in the development as hockey players playing in big games and do or die games and under the pressure, I think is great. I think this tournament in August, I think actually you look at the positive, what a better way to prepare yourself for a training camp, playing in a really highly important tournament, a highly competitive tournament. So I see it kind of as a positive. You know, comparing his situation to maybe Moritz's a year ago. Moritz had a year in the American League and a year in the Swedish Hockey League. You know, Simon is a year younger and just coming 1 year out of the Swedish Hockey League. So just, you know, a year less experience, a year younger. You know, and we'll see how he does. But, you know, seeing him here in the development camp, he's obviously very tall. He's very thick. It's actually the first time I've gotten to meet him in person since drafting him. He's thicker than I expected, which is in a good way. He looks very strong. His skating is excellent. So we're optimistic. We'll give him an opportunity, and if he's ready to play a regular role, that would be great for us. And, you know, we'll just kind of let the whole thing play itself out. But the World Juniors will be a great stepping stone coming into training camp to try and, you know, make a good impression and earn a spot on the team.
One last one for me. You've said numerous times, you know, you're not going to put a date on a playoffs or anything. Do you allow yourself to think about playoffs a little bit more now with the changes you've implemented?
No, my approach, I guess, you know, what I tried to do was try and address some areas, improve our team, or acquire some players or add some players that I think would, you know, improve our team. And today, you know, it's what is it, July 14th? I think I think we've improved the team, but we got to go on the ice in September and then play in October. So I think we've addressed some needs. I'm hoping we're a better team. I think we're progressing slowly in this rebuilding of the Red Wings. And, you know, are we good enough to make the playoffs next year? I don't know. I'm hopeful that we'll score more goals. We'll give up fewer goals. I'm hoping our power play will be a little bit better. Our penalty killing is a little bit better. Our goals against is a little bit better. And that pushes us, you know, higher up the standings. So time will tell. I'm optimistic that we're progressing, but kind of the plan really hasn't changed, and kind of sticking with what I intend to do and keep our younger guys and be patient with them, keep our draft picks and continue to build this way.
Thank you, Steve.
Max Boltman.
Hey, Steve, as we've talked to a lot of these guys the last couple of days, a lot of them have kind of used the phrase up and coming and ready to take the next step. I was just curious how much of your pitch to these guys was that, or is that something that they kind of have just concluded on their own?
Well, you know, the guys that I talked to, they're pretty astute. Like they kind of do their homework. Well, they do their homework. They look at, and they should, they look at one, you know, the team, where we are, what their role on the team is going to be, and, you know, everything that's important to them, they look into. So a lot of it, you know, the fact that, you know, yeah, I still consider them young, but, you know, you have the Dylan Larkin, Tyler Bertuzzi's, and then, you know, Lucas Raymond, Seider come in, create a little bit of excitement, add to our team. And, you know, I'm kind of looking up to my left at our depth chart here. You know, the Joe Velenos, the Dinas, we've got there's a core of young players that potentially has a chance to be a pretty good team one day, and the players recognize it. And there's a definite need in the role, like for an Andrew Kopp, for example, to have an impact on and off the ice in a leadership role with a group of young players that you know, hopefully is on the rise. I think that, you know, was attractive to some of the players.
And then I remember when you talked about improving the defense at the start of the offseason, you kind of made a point that it wasn't just going to be about defensemen. Is Perron, obviously he can score a lot of goals, but coming from a situation in St. Louis, like how much does he help the team defense, you think?
Well, he's a pretty competitive guy. We like the right shot, a natural winger with the right shot, very good on the power play. He's been through a lot of playoff runs. He's a very experienced player, excelled in the playoffs. That played on St. Louis's Stanley Cup team. So he really fills a need for us. I like the veteran leadership. Talking to people in St. Louis, our players that played with him there in St. Louis as well. I think he can provide a lot for us, but mostly, getting a right winger or the right shot right winger really fills a need, and I think it helps us with another player that will help our power.
And then Sherratt, obviously, probably going to slot next to Seider or Hronek there. What can he do for those two young righties?
Well, you mentioned Sherratt, Ollie Mata as well on the left side. Kind of defense first defenders, a defenseman, bigger bodies, get in the way, kind of hard to play against. Both, I think, I don't know what Derek will ultimately decide, but I would expect those two guys to play with Moritz and Phillip to be good complements for him. I think they're big guys. They have good length. They defend pretty well, can block shots, and are big bodies that are a little harder to play against. So I think they complement the two young guys on the right.
And then last thing, do you feel like you're just about done here, or is there more in your mind that you're looking to get done?
Done. I don't. We've got a lot of players right now. One, I don't know that I would, look to do anything more in free agency. I don't have a blockbuster in the works or anything like that for y'all. I think we get through the free agency here and, kind of explore, some teams that have to make moves in light of what's happened. I'd certainly, I think it's important to kind of keep looking around, to keep communicating with other teams around the league to see if there is any potential fit. But I don't see us being, I don't expect to, and I wouldn't expect me to announce any future signings. We got, 8D under contract with Jake Wallman yet to be signed, and we'll get that done. We've got, depending on where you want to slot guys, even 15 forwards with Robbie Fabry will, be out to start the season as well. Kind of want to see how things play out with our group. I'm pretty content right now to go into training camp with the group that we have. But I would also, I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't exploring if there's any other opportunities out there via trade, or, what I wouldn't want to do is go and sign another free agent, significant free agent, and put myself in a position where I have to trade somebody for whatever reason, because that's not a good time to do it. So, but I'm always looking at ways to try and get better.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ansar Khan.
Yeah, hi, Steve. You added some size and some grit with guys like Sherratt and Perron. You mentioned wanting to be harder to play against. How much of an emphasis was that?
Well, yeah, I think it's important for whether it's the new players that can't come in, or our current team. Harder to play against isn't necessarily in running guys through the glass or anything. It's being more dogged on the puck, being more responsible with the puck, being tighter defensively, more diligent defensively, competing harder. So, Sherratt's a big body. Matt is a big body. Even Kubalik's an offensive player, but he's a big, strong guy. So we want to be harder to play against because we're better defensively. We're more competitive. And even, we have more depth up front that we can match up better against, whether it's strong offensive teams or strong defensive teams.
You added a couple of cup winners in Mata and Perron, and some guys with extensive playoff experience. How much can that help just the influence on a young team?
Well, I think, I think guys that have been in good programs that have been successful, that have played in the league a long time, they learn a lot throughout their career from playing playing with good players, playing for good coaches, about the day-to-day habits of things you need to do to be successful and remain in the league. So I think I believe they really have a positive influence. I think you talk to any player that came into the league at 18, 19, or 20, the things they learned throughout their career, good things, and the guys that survive and perform well, they've learned to be pros. They learned the good habits. They know what what good teams do, the characteristics of good teams, what are the characteristics good teams have, how you fit into a team and how you lead and how you conduct yourself. So I think that's all things that can be beneficial to our team, bringing these guys in. They're good people, good character people, and good hockey players as well.
Thanks, Steve.
John Neo.
Hey, Steve, just wondering, when did you start to zero in on Cop and why, I guess, in your mind? And obviously you've been pretty conservative with term, but here's one that gets 5 years, et cetera.
Yeah, well, there was a small group of centermen that were free agents this year that we had some interest in. What we like about Andrew is, he is a centerman. He's 28 years of age. He's a very good athlete. He's very versatile. If you watched him this year with Winnipeg, you watched him when he went to the Rangers. He's playing center. He's playing the wing. He can play on the power play. We watch him against us here in Detroit, playing in the bumper in the middle on the power play. Plays on the penalty kill. He's a good face-off man. So he's very versatile. And at the age of 28, I'm comfortable offering a player a 5-year contract. We think he's a good athlete. We know he's a good athlete. We believe he takes real good care of himself. He's very professional. So at the age of 28, giving a guy a 5-year contract wasn't a concern for me.
And then obviously you'll have a lot of new faces come training camp. You also have a new coaching staff. Does that in a way make things a little easier to sort of integrate all this and get this thing rolling out of the gate?
Having a new coaching staff?
Just, it's sort of a fresh start for everybody. So these new guys, it's not like they're trying to fit into an old system, if you will. There's a bunch we're going to have 6 or 7 new faces in the lineup on opening night, potentially. New coaching staff. Derek will do things, the way he wants to, different than our old. I think he'll have different systems, if you want to call them that, different way of playing. He might have different line combinations. Our players, our current players, their roles might change a bit, whether they might be, playing with different line mates. We're going to play a different way. I've talked to Derek through the hiring process about his thoughts on defensive zone coverages, neutral zone coverages, how you play off face-offs offensively, defensively, and power play structures and things like that. So it's going to be an adjustment for our players, not only because you have a new coach who may want to use guys in a different way and play a different way, but you'll have a lot of new faces that'll be in the lineup and might be better. It might make us a better team by playing in a spot some of our existing players were used to playing in. So there is an adjustment for sure. The training camp is 23 days long. There's good and bad to playing 8 preseason games. Yeah, 8 preseason games. I think that's a really good way to get comfortable within a system. We'll try to get as many practices as we can to get familiar with the way the coaching staff wants to play. It'll take some time. I'm hopeful that we get off to a good start, obviously, but it could take a little time for everything to get sorted out and all the new faces to gel together. So we'll see how it goes, but I think there'll be a lot of excitement. I'm expecting our players to come into training camp a little bit like a lot of guys have something to prove here. They got there's competition for ice time, there's competition for jobs on the team. So I'm hoping this the change in the coaching staff, I'm hoping with the additions of the new players that all of our guys are coming ready to go, that it's important they make a good first impression, because they're going to want that, because the coach is going to have to make decisions on opening night as to who's in the lineup and who's playing in all different situations.
And along those lines, last one for me, when you do look at that depth chart up there to your left, how much better do you feel about it just in terms of depth, for lack of a better word?
Well, I think we do have more depth. For the most part, I think every team, I'm cautiously or nervously optimistic. I think we have more depth. I think we're a little bit, we can match up a little bit against other teams. And I just keep my fingers crossed that it plays out that way. So, yeah, I do. Again, I do think we have more depth with the addition of Perron, Kopp, Kubalik. I think we have a chance to, put out two pretty good power play units. I think we have a little bit more, ability. Even just Andrew Kopp's ability to win faceoffs will help us on the penalty kill. Just simply to win more faceoffs, the likelihood you get out of the zone quicker. The other team spending less time in your offensive zone. So, again, I think we have more depth. I think we're deeper on the blue line. We're a little bit younger. We're a little heavier. We'll see how Simon Edvinsson does. Can Moritz take another step a little bit? Philip Peronic, we're counting on to take another step, and hopefully the veterans that we've signed, help them and take that step, I guess.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Kevin Allen.
Yeah, Steve, thanks for doing this.
Yep.
Not only did you sign a bunch of free agents, but you sort of, for the lack of a better term, out-recruited some contenders for some of your players that they were interested as well. Is that a good sign that players are looking at your team now and seeing that they believe you're headed in the right direction? So maybe it'll help you over the next couple of years as you add players.
Yeah, again, it's more of a question probably for the players that we sign, Kevin, but I think it's encouraging that we were able to, able to sign players that they're excited to come here. Their genuine interest in coming here. They, weren't necessarily, I guess it's debatable, but weren't, necessarily everyone looking for 7 years and as much money as they could get. They were willing to work with us on the contracts to come in. So, we've got a lot of work to do. Here we've got a lot of improving left to do, but the new players coming in and with our small nucleus of remaining players, the young kids coming in, I think we're trending in the right direction, but I would just guard that we've still got a lot of work to do, and we'll see how this season plays out and to kind of gauge where we are. It's a lot of changes, a lot of new faces, all done with obviously good intentions and with the hope that we're going to be better, not only this year, but in a position to keep improving the team moving forward as well. It just, it's another step, I think, in the process. But I was encouraged with the fact that, these players have options. You'd have to ask them, and maybe I get a chance to sit down with them to pick their brain a little bit on what other options they had. What were they thinking? I assume they all had different options. I'm encouraged by the fact that we were able to bring them in, and hopefully this works out well. But I'm definitely encouraged by it, the ability to, or the willingness of some of the guys to come and play.
And see, once your team is labeled as a rebuilding team, there's always an expectation that there's a possibility of rookies making the team. You've been pretty consistent in saying that a rookie's got to earn his way on and that you're not going to hold a place for one. But when you look at the depth that you've added yesterday, did it suddenly become a lot harder to make this team if you're a rookie coming into training camp this season?
Yeah. Another way we certainly could have gone is just to leave roster spots open and let who our younger players or players that we had under contract just come in and put them on the team. Obviously I chose not to do that. I just hey, if we come in and we have too many good players, wouldn't that be a great problem to have? We'll figure it out at that point. I'd rather have our young guys, progress, go from junior hockey to the American League to the NHL, or if they're good enough, right to the NHL, or work their way through the steps, as opposed to putting them in the NHL because we've just decided that they're going there. And then, at Christmas or middle of November, geez, we're not very good. They're struggling and have to send them down. It's not not good for the team, and it's not good for the individual. And certainly we're not going to hold guys back. If our young guys are really good, we're in a position, we'll figure it out. We'll create a spot for them. That's never an issue. Having too many good players is not a problem, but it's not just for the younger players. Again, the whole roster, like, if guys have to know, like, hey, like, there's competition now. I've got to earn my ice time. I got to earn my spot on the rosters. There's no question. There's a group of guys. They're on the team, and we know that for the most part what that group is. They're going to be here, and they're expected to come into training camp in tip-top shape and lead the way. But having said that, they're not necessarily going to be first over the boards in any situation, because I think we have more players in here that will be options for the coaching staff and our younger players. I tell them, guys, have a good summer. Make sure you have a good training camp. Much like Lucas Raymond, we didn't really know what to expect for Lucas last year. We kind of thought he would start in the American League. He played well, as you recall, up in Traverse City. Then he came and played well through the preseason, and he started the year and remained there throughout it. And that would be the same thing for any of our young guys. If they're going to make us better and they're going to play a regular role, we'll figure it out.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
John Warwow.
Hey, Steve. John Worrell with the Associated Press in Buffalo. Larry's off, but I wanted to ask you about the salary cap. And I mean, $1 million rise of the salary cap isn't much, and you happen to be on the other end of most teams, given their cap situations. How much of an effect do you think it had on yesterday? And especially when it comes to some of the bigger name players still, being on the, unsigned at this point.
Yeah, well, I think if you look around the league, the really good teams, they had to make decisions not based on, they simply had to get under the cap, and they had to make decisions between players that they would love to keep. They couldn't afford them, so the cap, I think, has been tough. The really good teams weren't. It's hard for them to add. It's hard for them just to stay the same. And you watch a lot of guys get traded just for salary cap reasons. And then, at the other end of the spectrum, you have some teams that are rebuilding that are taking a more conservative approach and not, doing what they require to get to the floor, and are prepared just to be patient and acquire more draft picks and are at just a different stage. So between those two ends, I think there's, it's hard for some of the for everybody to find spots. It really is. And I think that's, I haven't really been busy with some other things this morning here, but I don't know if there's been any major signings today, but there's limited spots for big money, long-term contracts.
And just as a follow-up, and Andre Palat was the only guy who signed, and he did that late last night. But just as a follow-up, just how does your cap situation, knowing you have an edge on other teams when it comes to being able to spend, how does that alter your approach, or maybe does it change your approach, or provide you some kind of philosophy on how to go after or target free agents that you might want?
Well, for us, we chose not to re-sign. We traded some players at the deadline last year, and we chose not to sign some more guys. So I guess we were in a position to add players through free agency. What just having the cap space, having the roster spots. I did everybody will have varying opinions on whether we got value or didn't get value in the signings that we did, or every signing that goes around on the league. What we tried to identify players that fit what we were trying to do, would help us, the needs that we had. We tried to look at their age, and the term and the dollar value of the contracts, and decide what we wanted to do. So again, I just, in our situation, 3 years ago in the same situation, somewhat, I chose not to spend a lot of money or go out and sign a lot of players. We were building. Now we're, year 4 of it. We have roster spots. We have cap space. There were players there that we felt would help us. and not really deviate from what we're trying to do, but also, not necessarily, again, give maximum term and maximum dollar to players. So, I just think, with the cap, the situation the last couple of years, it has had an effect on what some teams can do and some teams want to do.
Thank you.
Ted Colfin.
Hey, Steve, was Dominic Kubalik almost like a bonus for you guys in a way? I mean, you guys didn't even know he was going to be on the market here until a few days ago. I mean, what does he bring to the table?
Well, he's got good sight. We've seen him a lot. Obviously, playing Chicago a little, quite a bit during the pandemic season. He's big. He can skate. He's got a great shot. And the contract we think is very reasonable. So I think it's a guy that has a lot of upside. Very reasonable contract. It's another player that gives us more scoring depth. So yeah, it was, you kind of you read these things as you're getting closer, who's getting QO'd, not. There was a sense that Dominic might not get QO'd, and as it turned out, it didn't. So we reached out to him really through Yuri Fisher, and he expressed an interest in coming. So we were pleased, very pleased. I think it's a very, very reasonable contract, and gives him an opportunity to kind of show, do his thing and perform well, and then we go from there.
Forgive me, the dog was barking up a storm when he brought it up. Is Fabry not going to be quite ready for camp at the start of the season?
Yeah, Robbie won't be ready. He won't be ready to start the season. I don't have an exact date for you. Probably be able to do that, in September. But yeah, he won't be ready. Jake Wallman and Robbie won't be ready to start the season.
Forgive me. Did Jake have surgery too?
Jake had shoulder surgery. Yes, at the end of the season.
Gotcha. All right. Thanks.
They'll both be fine and ready, but it just won't be at the start of the season.
That's good. Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Last question, Art Regner.
Hi, Steve. I want to ask you this question and put it kind of in a context that, the moves that you made yesterday, was this more of a message, or people are reading into it that the rebuild is taking the next step? I know you've kind of answered it, but was this a message to current Red Wing players that have been here that the infancy stage or the foundation is laid for this rebuild? It's time for everybody to up their game.
Not really, Art. First, guys like Dylan, Tyler, to some extent, Philip Peronic. I look up guys that have been here for, since I've been with the Wings, that it's been tough on them, they're grinding it out. They've been great, positive guys and understand what we're doing. So really, it's simply this, we had roster spots open, we have cap space, and we got to fill those spots. Let's decide how we fill them. Let's decide how much money we want to spend, and then how much money we want to spend on any particular player, and put the best team we can on the ice. And so that's what we did. And I think that, we're trying to improve. My message to the players, I guess, would be just, look, we are improving. We think the moves we made this summer are going to make us a better team. Our expectation is to be better. And for all of our guys, there's better players around you. Our expectations are going up, and we're counting on everybody to improve. So, again, the message doesn't, or the plan really hasn't changed. As contracts have expired, of roster spots open, we're going to continue to move our younger players in and try to fill in our roster, or complete our roster, improve our team with free agents that either are going to help us in the short term or are going to continue to be here as we get better.
Development camp just concluded this afternoon, or right around noontime. 4 games that I thought were highly entertaining. Your initial thoughts maybe on this development camp, and did anybody surprise you or stand out?
Well, first of all, I thought it was an excellent camp. Really got a chance to watch a lot of it, apart from yesterday. I thought Danny Cleary and our entire staff did a really good job in preparing it and organizing the camp. The feedback in watching the players, they seem to really enjoy all the different aspects of the week, the different things that were provided to them. I'm not going to really point to any individual player, but I was really pleased with the group as a whole. Some of their kids, really, some of them, a lot of them actually, their first development camp, because we haven't had one for 3 years, but you expect the younger ones, the 17, 18-year-olds, that they've got in relation to the 22 or 23-year-olds, a little bit more work to do in developing as they mature. But overall, I was very happy and how things went, the attitude of the players, and the commitment they made and the enthusiasm they showed out there.
Steve, I did not have the opportunity to be at the draft and ask you this question. And you did make a deal with me, if you remember, that you would answer this question after the draft. So I'm looking at it, all things equal, goalie, defenseman, forward, you're up to bat. You took 4 centers, 3 left wings, 2 D-men, 1 left-handed, 1 right-handed. So is it safe to say that at the draft, your goal was to replenish the stock up at forward prospects, that really everything equal, forward, specifically maybe center, since you drafted 4 of them, was the way you wanted to go?
Well, I would say not necessarily. Like, Chris, they put together the list of players. We know we have the 8th pick, and we put together the list accordingly, who they think the best prospects are in that spot. And when we picked 8th, the highest player on our list happened to be a centerman, so we took him. If it was a goalie, we might have taken him. Try not to overthink it, and that's what we had it. I guess you're like, we do need a centerman. We drafted a few of them, but again, we look at it in each of the rounds. Who do we really want at that pick? And it gets a little, with each round as you go along, the lines are blurred a little bit, and you got all these players from all over the world, really, and you can really pick any one of them. But so we may go a little bit more positional later in the draft, but up at the top, again, we had Marco right there, and that was the top player on the list with that pick. And had one of the guys, I'm not going to tell you exactly where we had him, but if somebody ahead of him was a different position, we probably would have had to go that way.
All right, one final question. And some of the best hockey I've ever seen, believe it or not, was watching practice sessions of the teams that you played on, because there was competition for roster spots for some of the players. I'm kind of curious, how important is it to have competition for jobs within the team? How much better does that make each player, knowing that, they have to bring it every day?
Yeah, well, I just think the level of practice, the level of intensity, the work ethic, I find that the top players, like Nicholas Lidstrom showed up every day. Chris Chelios, they showed up every day. They worked hard. They were really good on the ice. Igor Larionov, Pavel, all these guys were really hard workers. They're very professional, and they just elevated the atmosphere, the everything about it. So, the more good players we can have, guys are naturally competitive. They look around, they see a guy doing something well, they're going to try and outperform them, and I think guys enjoy competition. I think they like being pushed. So I think it's a good thing. I think you'll see, again, the group that we have here, I think for the most part, I think they're all pretty driven guys. They're motivated, and what they're going to have to do is really perform and produce. And what it does do is, there's some nights where it's a bit of a grind, and you just kind of, you've got to figure out a way to play well, because it's, with more good players, the coach has different options to put a player in a situation or play other guys more. You're not going to play, X amount of minutes and in all these situations just because the coach looks down the bench and doesn't have anybody to put out there, or doesn't feel confident putting anybody out there. I think with the group that we have, Derek will have a few more options when he looks down the bench in any situation.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, those are all the questions we had. Steve, thanks so much for the time today. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate everybody taking some.
All right, I'm Daniela Bruce alongside Art Regner and Ken Cal. After hearing from Steve Yzerman, a few takeaways, but my biggest takeaway is Art Regner behind the scenes of asking a question. I wish you could all see it. I know all of his mannerisms when he's going to ask the next question. He was running back and forth, but he made it.
I did.
What was your reaction to what Steve had to say, Art?
Well, I'm glad that he answered my question because the draft question, again, look, I mean, he is a very intense, focused young man. He doesn't mess around, no nonsense with Steve. He has a plan and he's not going to deviate from that plan. And when opportunity presents itself, and I think opportunity did present itself in the free agent market, and he took it. And, I knew once the Huso deal was made that it was, let's hang on because we're going to go for a little ride here with Stevie right now. And, and as usual, he delivered.
Ken, what'd you think?
Well, I guess the greatest takeaway I got was the competition factor. And I know you were talking about that during the 3-on-3 broadcast, and you made a really good point about now it's up to the players to get the job done and win a job on the team. Nothing's going to be handed to them, and they've got to compete for a position, whether it be power play, penalty kill, regular shift, what have you. Our goaltenders, Huso and Nedeljkovic, they're going to compete for the number one job. Who's going to play a majority of the game? So he's created an atmosphere here where I think it's really good competition amongst the players.
And Steve Yzerman did also confirm that both Robbie Fabry and Jake Wallman will miss the start of the season due to injuries. Robbie Fabry obviously recovering from that torn ACL, and Jake Wallman underwent shoulder surgery at the end of last season. So that opens up a couple of more spots, at least for a small time, for some players to make an impression and earn their spot.
Edmondson.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, Art. There's a defenseman down, so odds of Simon Edvinsson making the team just went from up here to up here.
Well, we all talked about Simon Edvinsson, especially during our stream today. But one player we really didn't talk about, and I really want to find out more, is Albert Johansson. And here's a player that nobody really talks about yet. When I talked to Nicholas Lidstrom, he loves this guy. This guy could be a dark horse. He could be another youngster, along with Edvinsson, that if he has a great training camp, he could be a part of this team.
Well, Albert is coming over. He'll be here for training camp at least.
Right. And exactly, competition is the name of the word. And you could see where Steve said, hey, look, wouldn't we like to have an abundance of players where these are very difficult decisions for us to make? The thing that's interesting about Edvinsson, and he addressed the media, and we were down there, and we asked him this question. I know for a fact when he was drafted, they listed him at 6'4". He was listed at 6'6". He said, and I'm amazed at this, and I'm an American, so I'm not quite sure how much this means, but he grew 1 centimeter in a
month.
Yeah. I don't know how many inches that is. Again,
a centimeter is like a tenth of an inch, I think.
Tenth of something, yeah. Well, I mean, whatever it is, I think there was a significant little growth spurt. So, the sky's the limit. He did say that Elmer is much larger than him still in a mountain, but, I'm impressed with it. I know underneath that Edvinsson is a pretty impressive young man right now, and even though he's a year younger, he was doing things that Mo had done in the SHL at a year younger. Very similar statistics and very similar leadership and the qualities that Mo showed in the SHL, Edvinsson showed last year. So I'm not saying that he's better than Mo or anything like that, but I think that the learning curve, I would not be that surprised if he makes the team coming out of camp. I know I expect him to, but I expect virtually, the Red Wings have 40 players out there. I think every one of them can make it. So, but I'm really, really looking forward to it. And I do think that the goal right now and where the Red Wings are at, and that's why I do think we're about to take the next step in the rebuild. I'm not saying they're a playoff team next year or anything like that. But what I am saying is that there is competition on this roster. That's why I asked Steve that question. There's competition on this roster. That is only going to make not only the Red Wings better as a team, I think it's going to make each and every individual player better because they know The old Satchel Paige thing, Kenny, don't, don't look behind you or look behind you, because someone's always trying to catch up to you, and that's the environment that Steve has created.
And Simon Edvinsson, just to further talk about what he said, he's 199 centimeters currently. Of course, I had to do the conversions because I can't do that in my head. That is 6'6". So he did grow a couple of inches since he's been drafted. Can confirm he is very tall. Soderblom is a mountain that likes to score goals. So.
Exactly, yeah, that's what he said. He said he's not Elmer size, but America, let's get up with the times. Let's go to the metric system.
I think we should. But some other defensemen that Steve Yzerman talked about is 2 free agent signings in Mata and Sherratt. And he kind of said what we were talking about before the press conference, that they're more defensive defensemen that are going to pair well with Mo Seider and Philip Hronek. So excited to see what those pairings look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we described, big bodies. And again, when you clog up the front of the net like that, it's hard for the offenses to get in front of the net. So you got 2 big bodies like Sherratt and Edvinsson, or even Mo Seider. It's going to be hard for the opposition in their offensive zone. But the other thing too is, let's face it, all teams go through injuries, and what you really want is you want to have depth. And even though you do have some players that might not be able to be on the Red Wings team for the opening lineup, you got guys like Bergeron who perhaps could be a player that could jump up and down. But in this day and age, everyone's getting hurt, and you can't count on all these guys to play 82 games a season. Someone's going to get hurt. Someone's going to have to come in and take their place. And I think where the Red Wings lacked over the last several years is when a key player went down, who was going to replace him? The more talented players you have in your stable, the better off you're going to be.
Well, Art, that's why I really like the Dominic Kubalik signing, a 2-year deal, very affordable deal. Steve Yzerman said they were kind of surprised that he was available for them to pick up in free agency. He's a guy that is going to add depth, and he's got that fresh start here in Detroit. He struggled a couple of years in Chicago, but he mentioned in his media availability that when a team is struggling, like Chicago was with the ups and downs of a season, it's hard to find your groove. So hopefully he can do that here in Detroit and find some line mates that he gels with.
Well, it's really interesting. Maybe going back to with the Norris family owning both teams at one time, Detroit and Chicago, but there always seems to be a connection, between those 2 franchises. And, what Chicago is starting to ascend down and, start to rebuild in the tear down, where Detroit now is in a different, I truly believe this is in a different stage where they're starting to ascend up the ladder. And part of that, again, I know we're sounding a little bit redundant here, is the competition. This roster, they're better. Steve at least admitted that.
What do you say, nervously optimistic?
Yeah,
was that his word?
I would expect that if you're a current Red Wing player, or if you're one of these free agents, or, somebody, one of the young prospects coming over from Europe, jobs are available, but there's more competition for those jobs. They were hamstrung a little bit by contracts and salary cap, and maybe Steve wanted to make some more moves, but he really couldn't because the financial purse strings were tied way too tight. Now it's kind of open season on that, and you saw, when he did have money, that he was more than willing to spend it, and I think he made some really good moves. But I'll tell you again, I know I said this at the beginning of just before the Steve presser, but I really do love the competition that we're going to see in net between Husso and Ned.
All right, gentlemen, let's wrap this thing up. We heard from Steve Yzerman. It's been a big week with development camp and free agency happening all at the same time. What are your final thoughts on the week? Ken, you go first.
Well, one other thing is what I'm looking forward to is as we get into the preseason games and the start of the regular season, keep in mind, and Steve Yzerman said, you might have to make a few deals. And so that's always, you don't want to give up a spot on your roster, but on the other hand, if you can make it better because teams are going to have to unload players to get under the salary cap, that could bode well for Detroit, whether it's a player coming in or some more draft choices that he can use in the future. So that's one big thing that I took away from Steve at the end of his conversation. And that's another thing that we can all look forward to, is this team constantly getting better and better and stronger.
All right, Art, obviously a very big week here in Detroit. What do you think of everything that unfolded in the past 7 days?
Well, I'm encouraged by it. I really did think, when I asked Steve the development camp question, I thought those 4 games that we just did, the 3 of us together here, I thought it was really good hockey.
Yeah.
I thought it was high-end hockey, and there weren't a lot of mistakes out there. No one got flustered. You can see the Red Wing mentality starting to take shape, and it started here with young kids who were here for the first time. So, when he said Dan Cleary did a great job the first time, you could tell that this week was very important in establishing the Red Wing way of playing hockey, and I think you saw that in the 4 games that we live stream. You can look at them right now if you want. Really,
That's right, Red Wings YouTube.
right, Red Wings YouTube. But I think that they're very pleased. I think they like the direction that this team is going from, and so I'm encouraged, because it really seems that the hierarchy of the Red Wings are encouraged. And, there were times, in the beginning, because of the, some of the contracts that the Red Wings had and some of the things that Steve inherited, where there was only so much he could do. Now we're really starting to see Steve be able to maneuver and not be hamstrung by certain things, and most of them financial. And we're really starting to see this team take shape. And as Ken said, competition. There's competition on this roster, and I'm looking forward to seeing this team. The team that takes the ice against the Montreal Canadiens. What is it? October 14th.
14th.
Steve said he said 7 to 8 different guys could be in that roster. So that's for your roster's only 24 guys. I mean, 8 of them is that's a third. You're changing the lineup by a third. So I'm looking forward to it. I get way too worked up about this stuff.
Not at
all.
Yeah, not you.
But I'm definitely into it, and I think that Steve and Drapes and Yuri Fisher, who was essential in Kubalik, and Dan Cleary, and of course Shorin Horkoff. I mean, if you look at this assemblage of upper management that the Red Wings have, and then down to the coaching staffs, with we could go to Dan Watson in Toledo, to Ben Simon, who's doing an excellent job in Grand Rapids, and now Derek Lalonde. I mean, things are looking up for the Red Wings, and they could surprise a few people. I'm not going to go out on the limb and say they're a playoff team next year, but they could make some.
All right. Art's final thoughts were a whole book that you can find on, I don't know where we're going to sell that book, but your final thoughts on today's stream.
There is a Redwoods book.
Yeah.
I told
know,
you about the
I know.
Redwoods.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to get it for Ken. All right.
All right. Well, it is very exciting, Art. You're not the only one who's amped up to see what the Red Wings are going to do this coming season. And we're looking forward to September, which unfortunately and fortunately at the same time is not too far away. Summer is almost over, and we'll be back in Traverse City before we know it. A big thank you to all of you for tuning in to another edition of The Word on Woodward, and we'll see you next time.